to this episode of Fantasy Baseball Picks and Bets presented by Prize Picks on the Mayo Media Network. I am Garion Thorne, and we are breaking down everything you need to know for June 23rd and the 7-game featured slate on DraftKings that kicks off just past 7 p.m. Eastern Time. There is two main slates. On Wednesday, there's an afternoon and an evening. We are going to focus our DFS conversation and actually our betting and our prize picks on the later slate. So let's actually begin with some prize picks before we get into the DFS conversation. And, of course, some best bets over on the DraftKings Sportsbook. If you guys don't remember or don't know, if you head on over to prizepicks.com and use the promo code MLB, you can have your first deposit matched up to $100. So make sure, if you haven't done that first deposit at Prize Picks, you use that promo code. And here are a couple plays that I really like on Wednesday. So again, both of these are in the late slate. Let's start with Aaron Judge, who is going up against the Kansas City Royals, and Danny Duffy. So we already know that Danny Duffy is going to have a pitch count in this game as he makes his first start in quite some time coming off of the injured list, but I still think Judge probably gets at least 2 plate appearances against the lefty, and for me, that's going to be enough to get Judge over 7.5 fantasy points. Judge this season against left-handed pitching in just over 80 plate appearances has a .338 average and a 173 WRC plus. He has owned lefties so far this season, and believe me, there's a lot of like 8.5s and 9s on the board over at Prize Picks for Wednesday. So to see Judge at just 7.5, I know he hasn't been great so far in June, but I think this is a matchup that definitely suits his strengths. Another over I like on Wednesday is Austin Meadows, also to go over 7.5 fantasy points for the Tampa Bay Rays. They are going up against the Boston Red Sox. And Garrett Richards. For anyone who has watched these videos consistently, you know how I feel about Garrett Richards and just how he's been pitching as of late. We'll get into some really specific Richards numbers a little bit later on, but just know his last 4 starts have not gone well. He's consistently giving up hard contact. He's had 9 opponent barrels in his past 4 starts, and you could make the argument that while they've been bad, they could have been much, much worse. I still think Richards is due for like an 8 earned run game at some point very soon, and I think the Rays could definitely be the team to do that. And Meadows in particular, another guy who's been struggling so far in the month of June. However, he takes it to a whole nother level when he gets to go up against a right-handed pitcher. 14 of his 15 home runs so far this season have been hit against right-handed pitching, and that has translated to a .333 isolated power and a 149 WRC plus within the split. He's going to be batting in the top third of this Rays lineup. I think he probably gets 5 plate appearances on Wednesday and is able to get over this number. And again, a game that I think will be high scoring, maybe on both sides, but specifically for the Tampa Bay Rays. So over 7.5 for Austin Meadows, over 7.5 for Aaron Judge on Prize Picks. Let's head on over to DraftKings. So again, 7-game slate. First pitch, 7:05 Eastern Time between Baltimore and Houston. So that is when lineups lock. If Tuesday's slate was defined by how amazing the starting pitching was, I think Wednesday's slate is defined by uncertainty when it comes to the pitching. We don't know, as of recording, who is starting for the Mets, so that's not a great start. We've also got some pitch count concerns with some of the mid-tier guys. I already mentioned Danny Duffy. You just can't use this guy if he's going to max out at 70, 75 pitches. We haven't been given a concrete number, but I would assume it's in that ballpark. Also, Mike King, who's starting for the Yankees, but starting is a really loose term. He's kind of extended opening. Even when Mike King has pitched well, it seems like he never makes it into the 5th inning. So for him to be $7,100, I don't want to say one of the more expensive pitchers on this slate, but like a legitimate mid-tier price, it says a lot about the lack of depth we have on this particular slate. So I'm not saying you're going to have to pay up for starting pitching. I think there are some mid-tier guys, but it's not nearly the type of quality we saw on Tuesday. So right off the hop, we've got an amazing matchup between the Dodgers and the Padres. It's Trevor Bauer going up against Joe Musgrove. It's tough to really love either one of those guys at their price points. Yes, Bauer is coming off his best start in quite some time. However, that was against the Diamondbacks. The Padres are not the Diamondbacks, and we still haven't really seen 2020 Trevor Bauer in the last couple of weeks, with a lot going on in the background. So it's hard to love him above $10,000 against the Padres. However, he's still Trevor Bauer. He's still got a lot of strikeout upside, a ton of fantasy ceiling. I would say he's probably like my fourth or fifth favorite pitcher on this slate when it comes down dollar to dollar. So not saying to fade him entirely, but I do think there are better options. The Dodgers are getting healthier. Max Muncy back on Tuesday. So Musgrove has also, it's been a while since he's even exceeded 20 DraftKings points. So just hard to pay up that much money for results we haven't seen in quite some time. The other guy who's in the top 3 in terms of price point, Trevor Rogers, I would say I like him the most of those 3 guys. However, it's a tough matchup against the Blue Jays. We saw on Tuesday, like Sandy Alcantara pitched incredibly, but didn't get a lot of strikeouts. And that's really the book with Toronto, is they do not strike out. So hard to envision Trevor Rogers having an incredible start, like hitting his absolute upside. It's also a little nerve-wracking, especially with George Springer now back for the Blue Jays, to use a left-handed pitcher against this predominantly right-handed Jays lineup. But sticking with the Jays, that's where we find our first really, really viable pitcher, and that's Robbie Ray, who is $9,200. If you guys will remember, Ray faced the Marlins recently. It was 4 starts ago for Robbie Ray, and he dominated the Marlins. 6 innings, just 1 earned run, no walks, 9 strikeouts. And that pretty much lines up with what the Marlins have done against left-handed pitching all season long. They have a 28.7% strikeout rate against left-handed pitching. That is the highest mark in the National League. They also have just an 87 WRC plus against left-handed pitching. That is a bottom 5 mark in the entirety of baseball. So it seems to set up really, really well for Robbie Ray in this one, coming off a rough start against Baltimore. But as we all know, Baltimore hits lefties really well. You cannot say the same about the Marlins. Then as we kind of move into that mid-tier, I think 2 names where I'm not totally captivated by their ceiling, their probability of hitting 30 DraftKings points, but I think each of these 2 guys is a lock to score 20. And at around $8,000 on a slate like this, that's not something you could ignore. So let's start with James Kaprielian of the Oakland Athletics. He is going up against the Texas Rangers, so you know it's a good matchup. I mean, the Rangers have just been bad in the month of June. They've just got a 128 ISO and a 77 WRC plus coming into Tuesday's slate, so a good matchup for any pitcher. I will say Kaprielian has struggled with left-handed bats so far this season, so you start running through that Texas lineup and go, okay, well, they've got Joey Gallo, they've got Willie Calhoun, I guess they've got Nate Lowe, but like Lowe's been terrible since April, so it's not like they have a ton of guys I'm super worried about. I think Kaprielian, who so far this season, 3.67 expected ERA across 38 innings. He's got 42 strikeouts in those 32 innings. He's just a good, solid pitcher, and he's been pitching well, coming off a decent start against the Yankees. I think he takes advantage of this really nice spot against the Rangers, and just below him, we find Jose Urquidy, who has scored at least 22 DraftKings points in 3 of his past 4 starts. The one bad start came against Toronto, and we kind of forgive that at this point. They're just a team that is tough to pitch against. Urquidy is not a huge strikeout guy. He's someone who has pitched better at home than he has on the road, so maybe that's something to watch for. But we just talked about how Baltimore hits left-handed pitching. They don't hit right-handed pitching. In fact, their 290 WOBA against righties is the lowest mark in the American League. So if you're going to pick on Baltimore, you have to do it when a right-handed pitcher is on the mound. And obviously, Urquidy has a ton of win expectancy in this game. The Astros are massive favorites on the money line on the DraftKings Sportsbook. So I think when you add all that together, do I think Urquidy is going to score 32 DraftKings points? Probably not. Does he score 24? Sure. And at $8,100, you're looking at 3x value. And I think that's sort of the goal. We're not shooting for huge numbers from pitchers on this slate, aside from maybe Robbie Ray, who again has a ton of strikeout upside. Okay, let's talk some stacks. And I sort of tipped my hand earlier when talking about Garrett Richards, but I love the Rays on this slate. Not only because of Wander Franco and how affordable he is, but Garrett Richards, his last 4 starts. So he's had 71 batted ball events in his past 4 starts. 12.7% of those batted ball events have been barreled. That's a very high rate. And then 66.2% of those batted ball events are classified as hard hit. Hard hit being, was the exit velocity over 95 miles per hour. So 2/3 of the balls put into play off of Garrett Richards the past 4 starts have been above 95 miles per hour. This guy is getting squared up consistently. And again, I just think like a huge blow-up performance is on the horizon, and why wouldn't it happen Wednesday? So we've got Meadows at 5.3, Arozarena at 5.1, Brandon Lau at 4.5. Joey Wendell is kind of a fun name, $4,300. He's got a 169 WRC plus against right-handed pitching so far this season. You wouldn't really expect that from Joey Wendell. He's having a good season, but those types of numbers usually reserved for a different caliber of hitter. And then Wander Franco, who probably won't hit a home run again on Wednesday, although who knows? He is the number 1 prospect in baseball for a reason. But as he was on Tuesday, he is still priced at the bare minimum. He is $2K on this slate, which is insane. So his ownership is going to be ridiculous. But if you're stacking the Rays, there's no way you can stack the Rays and not put Franco into a lineup. It just makes way too much sense and saves you so much money. The other stack I like, pretty obvious, pretty chalky, but we have to talk about the Astros going up against Tom Eshelman. Eshelman survived his last start, his first of the season against the Blue Jays, but he was babied in that game. Threw, I think, just like 65 pitches, got through 5, was not allowed to get to the 3rd time through the order, and it makes sense. You look at the numbers from that one start, just a 7% swinging strike rate, 95.2% zone contact rate. If you cannot throw a pitch in the strike zone and get a swing and miss, you will not survive at the major league level. So Houston let a lot of people down on Tuesday's slate. I think they make up for it on Wednesday. Your regular stacking options here. Altuve's 5.7, Correa's 5,000, Alvarez is 5,000. Michael Brantley, leading the league in batting average, can't be stopped, hitting above 500 in the month of June. That's insane. He's 4,100. Yuli Gurriel, slightly above him at 4,800. So Astros, obvious. Rays, I think that's the stack you can maybe get a little bit of a variance with. And aside from Franco, who again will be chalky, justifiably so. Okay, let's get out of here with some best bets on the DraftKings Sportsbook, and we stick with the Tampa Bay Rays. I've already talked so much about Richards, I don't really have to do it anymore. However, I like Tampa Bay to go over their team total of 4.5 runs. That is plus 104. So a nice plus money bet with the Rays to score at least 5 runs. Again, Richards is terrible. Boston's bullpen also in the month of June has a 5.03 FIP. So all the pitching in Boston has really nosedived the past 4 or 5 weeks. I just think the Rays are going to score some runs in this game. So I like that at plus money. And then Oakland on the money line. We talked about Caprillion. Should mention it's Mike Foltynewicz on the other side of that matchup. Foltynewicz has had a nightmarish 2021 season, particularly against left-handed bats. So Matt Olson might have a really, really nice game on Wednesday. But the last 8 starts that Foltynewicz has made, the Rangers are 1-7. And the reason for that is, in that span of time, Folty has a 6.64 ERA and just an 11% strikeout rate. I mean, he is a shell of his former self. Also worth noting, Oakland is 14-5 in their past 19 games. They're really good. The Rangers are really bad. I was expecting to see this, even with the A's on the road. I was thinking this was going to be like minus 170, minus 175. It's only minus 155 on the DKSB, so I will jump on that. A's money line minus 155, Rays over 4.5 runs plus money plus 104, and that's going to do it for this episode of Fantasy Baseball Picks and Bets presented by Prize Picks on the Mayo Media Network. I am Garion Thorne, and I will catch you guys next time.